Singapore, the country where even the hawker uncle can quote Shakespeare, but will still ask you to fill out Form 19A before he serves you noodles. Yes, Singaporeans speak perfect English, but sometimes they think in Excel spreadsheets. Welcome to the land where grammar is flawless, yet creativity requires a permit. You see, the world adores Singapore's English fluency. Westerners say, wow, you guys sound so educated, but that admiration stops the moment they realize nobody in Singapore will speak unless it's been pre-approved, minuted, and filed in triplicate. English here isn't a language, it's a civil service. It follows procedure, hierarchy, and risk management. It's not for expressing rebellion, it's for making sure the PowerPoint looks compliant. And that's where the paradox begins. Singaporeans conquered English, but English never quite conquered them. They imported the Queen's language and then treated it like a government policy. Everything is formal, structured, and neatly laminated. Even small talk sounds like an SOP. You don't chat in Singapore, you liaise. You don't argue, you raise a point for consideration. And you don't say no, you say we'll study this in due course. But don't mistake this for stupidity. It's genius, bureaucratic genius. Because in Singapore, thinking like a bureaucrat is how you survive. It's how you rise through the ranks, avoid punishment, and still look intelligent while saying absolutely nothing new. And today, we're going to decode how that mindset, part British legacy, part survival mechanism, turned Singapore into both an English-speaking paradise and a creativity desert. Stay till the end, because the final chapter will answer one burning question. Can a nation that speaks perfect English ever think freely? Or is English just another uniform in Singapore's army of order? Let's rewind a little. When the British left Singapore, they didn't just leave behind tea, cricket, and a weird obsession with queuing. They left something far more powerful, the English language. But Singapore didn't just adopt English, it institutionalized it, the same way it institutionalized everything else. In the West, English evolved through rebellion. Shakespeare broke grammar rules, rock lyrics murdered syntax, and TikTok slang now commits weekly crimes against literature. In Singapore, English became a civil service language, clean, correct, hierarchical, and above all, obedient. You can almost hear Sir Stamford Raffles whispering from beyond the grave, "Thou shalt speak perfect English, but never use it to question authority." And so, a new Confucianism was born, except this time, instead of filial piety, it was grammatical piety. Children memorized vocabulary lists like commandments. Thou shalt not split infinitives. Thou shalt not use Singlish in front of ang mors, and thou shalt never speak louder than your manager. Singaporean English became the moral code of the nation, polished enough for international investors, yet restrained enough to never threaten the hierarchy. It's not a tool for expression, it's a badge of compliance. And here lies the paradox. When you grow up speaking English as your mother tongue and your manager's favorite KPI, you start confusing clarity with obedience. You can write a flawless essay about innovation without ever having an innovative thought. But let's be fair, this linguistic discipline built a global brand. Singapore sounds modern, efficient, and educated precisely because everyone speaks like a LinkedIn post. No emotional outbursts, no slang chaos, no individuality, just smooth grammatical harmony. The question is, what happens when a language meant for creativity becomes a cage for conformity? In Singapore, being correct is not just a virtue, it's a survival instinct. Every child learns from day one that mistakes are not opportunities, they're liabilities. Grammar errors, red ink, late assignments, parent-teacher conference, creative interpretation, not aligned with marking scheme. By the time you graduate, you don't speak English to express yourself. You speak English to not get scolded. That's the tyranny of correctness, a national religion where syntax replaces soul. Singaporeans will spend 10 minutes debating whether it's less or fewer, but they'll freeze when you ask, "What do you think?" This obsession produces flawless presenters. With PowerPoints emptier than a hawker center at 4 a.m., they can explain how to innovate, why to innovate, and when to innovate, as long as someone else has already innovated first. Because in Singapore, risk is a four-letter word. You don't say something bold. You wait for someone important to say it first. Then you agree, with excellent pronunciation. And that's why Singaporean English sounds so polished, yet predictable. Every sentence feels like it went through 3 layers of management approval and 2 rounds of risk assessment. It's what happens when linguistic precision becomes cultural anesthesia. Meanwhile, countries with chaotic grammar, America, the Philippines, even India, produce comedy, satire, and startups. Why? Because they value voice over rules. Singapore, on the other hand, values structure over spontaneity. It's why Singaporeans can debate Oxford commas, but not politics. But here's the funny part. This obsession with correct English isn't just academic, it's moral. In Singapore, good grammar signals good character. Speak badly, and you're seen as lazy. Write casually, and you're uneducated. Make one typo in a LinkedIn post, and your professionalism just died in front of 300 recruiters. So everyone becomes fluent and frightened. Grammatically perfect, but emotionally muted. Singapore has a fascinating relationship with creativity. It's like that one friend who says, "I'm totally spontaneous," right before scheduling a time slot to be spontaneous. Here, even imagination has a reporting line. Before you can think outside the box, you must first submit a request form to confirm the box's dimensions. That's not an exaggeration. It's a mindset built over generations. From primary school to public service, the unspoken rule is never be the one who breaks the system. You can be clever, but not controversial. You can be smart, but never smarter than your boss. You can innovate, but only within the framework of innovation guidelines. This is where English comes in, not as a language, but as a leash. Singapore's version of English isn't about expression, it's about execution. It's the software that runs the bureaucracy. Every phrase is optimized for clarity, compliance, and plausible deniability. The result? A society fluent in articulation but allergic to originality. Singaporeans don't challenge ideas. They provide feedback. They don't disagree. They propose an alternative perspective. It's not conversation, it's corporate diplomacy. Even art feels like policy. Every painting has a budget, every documentary a disclaimer. Ask a Singaporean artist what inspires them, and they'll say, funding from the National Arts Council. And yet, this psychological order works. It produces world-class efficiency, zero corruption, and students who can quote Hamlet in perfect diction. It's just, they'll never write the next Hamlet. Because when you train minds to always seek permission before thinking, the imagination becomes institutionalized. It doesn't fly, it files. Still, Singapore's English-speaking class is proud of this discipline. To them, creativity without control is chaos. Freedom without a framework is failure, and rebellion, well, that's for people who can afford to lose. In Singapore, English fluency is more than communication, it's class signaling. It separates those who run the system from those who run errands for the system. The accent, the vocabulary, the syntax, they're the modern equivalents of noble titles. You can almost hear it in meetings. "Ah, he speaks Queen's English. Must be management." "Ah," she says, "la," must be frontline. The bureaucratic elite of Singapore are fluent, polished, and proudly detached. They write emails that sound like press releases, give speeches that sound like annual reports, and smile like they've practiced it in HR workshops. Their grammar is flawless, their empathy optional. You see, English here became the currency of hierarchy. The better you speak, the less manual your life becomes. That's why every ambitious Singaporean parent sends their kid to an international school, not to learn ideas, but to learn accents. And what an irony. In a nation built on meritocracy, language became the new aristocracy. Fluency equals authority. Polish equals credibility. Even sincerity must sound like it's been proofread. But it's not just about class, it's about comfort. These linguistic aristocrats speak English like it's a shield. They can discuss stakeholder engagement and strategic alignment all day. But ask them about loneliness, inequality, or fear, and suddenly the grammar collapses. Emotions don't fit neatly into PowerPoint slides. Singapore's English elite are trained to sound global but think domestically. They dream of London but vacation in Sentosa. They say, let's think big, but mean, let's not get fired. And so the bureaucracy reproduces itself, articulate, elegant, and fundamentally risk-averse. Everyone looks modern, but no one feels alive. This is the paradox of the Singaporean mind. English gave them a voice, but also a filter. They can communicate with the world, just not with their own soul. In Chapter 5, we'll look at how this linguistic hierarchy spills into everyday life, from schools to workplaces, and how even jokes must pass an internal audit before they're funny. In most countries, humor is spontaneous. In Singapore, it's regulated. You can't just make a joke. You have to check who's in the room, what the hierarchy is, and whether the joke aligns with organizational values. Even laughter comes with a risk assessment. Singaporeans don't tell jokes, they issue them like memos. Dear all, please be informed this is a humorous remark. No offense intended, for internal circulation only. It's not their fault, it's the training. From school to the civil service, Singaporeans are raised to communicate like everything might one day be used as evidence. Emails sound like press releases, chats sound like corporate policy, apologies sound like risk disclaimers. Try having a normal conversation with a Singaporean manager. Ask, so how's life? They'll reply, we are managing expectations and monitoring progress. The bureaucracy isn't just in the office, it's in the bloodstream. There's a protocol for everything. How to order coffee, how to say sorry, how to disagree politely without sounding like you're disagreeing. That's why even humor here feels procedural. Sarcasm must be pre-approved, irony comes with disclaimers, and satire is outsourced to foreigners. The local version of rebellion is making a safe meme. And yet Singaporeans are funny, in a very specific bureaucratic way. They excel at what I call admin humor, jokes about inefficiency, queue numbers, and ERP charges. It's self-deprecating, risk-free, and fully compliant with the Ministry of Funny. But deep down, this communication style hides a quiet truth. The nation speaks English like a global citizen, but jokes like an auditor. Every word is precise, every phrase calculated, every silence strategic. It's efficient, but exhausting. Because when even humor needs an SOP, what's left that's truly human? Here's the final irony. Singapore achieved what most post-colonial nations only dream of: linguistic perfection. Fluent citizens, clear communication, global respect. But in the process, something quietly froze. Because when a language becomes too perfect, it stops being alive. Singapore's English is efficient, but sterile. It's a tongue that can negotiate a trade deal, but can't write a love song. It can draft a white paper, but not whisper poetry. It's a language optimized for progress, but allergic to passion. This is the curse of fluency without freedom. Singapore mastered the world's most expressive language, and then declawed it. Every sentence must be polite, every word appropriate, every opinion aligned. English here no longer liberates thought, it administrates it. And yet, the people don't see it as oppression, they see it as order. In a land where chaos equals weakness, restraint becomes virtue. Where the West sees conformity, Singapore sees survival. But what happens when a nation's greatest achievement, linguistic discipline, becomes its softest cage? When its citizens can quote Harvard but not feel human? When clarity replaces curiosity and correctness replaces courage? Walk through Raffles Place or a ministry corridor and you'll hear it. Fluent English echoing like the sound of progress, and silence. It's not that Singaporeans can't speak freely, it's that they've learned not to need to. They speak for efficiency, not for expression, for order, not for originality. Singapore proved that language can build a world-class city, but maybe, just maybe, it takes a little linguistic chaos to build a civilization, because creativity begins where compliance ends. And perhaps the next evolution of Singapore English won't sound more British, it'll sound more human. So, what do we make of it all? A nation that speaks English better than the English themselves, but thinks like a perfectly trained bureaucrat. A society where even creativity has an agenda and freedom has a filing cabinet. Singapore's English isn't broken, it's too fixed. Every syllable polished, every sentence rehearsed, every joke evaluated for potential backlash. It's communication without chaos, and that's exactly why it feels lifeless. But maybe this was inevitable. Singapore was never built on rebellion. It was built on reliability. It doesn't worship free speech. It worships stability. It doesn't produce wild poets or mad philosophers. It produces PowerPoint artists with impeccable bullet points, and you can't really blame them. When survival depends on order, creativity becomes a luxury. When your entire history is about not failing, originality feels like a threat. Still, something's missing. Something raw, unpredictable, beautifully human. Something that can't be formatted into a government brochure or sanitized into corporate language. Maybe what Singapore needs next isn't another grammar-perfect generation, but one that dares to mispronounce something, to speak badly, but think freely. Because the world doesn't remember the people who followed instructions, it remembers the ones who rewrote them. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If English gave Singapore its voice, then what will give it its soul?